In 52 BC, Julius Caesar made a tactical decision that defies standard military logic. He trapped an entire hostile army inside a hilltop fortress and then turned himself into the bait. Caesar was operating deep in hostile territory, surrounded by enemies. Above his men, an entrenched Gallic force watched from the heights, and marching quickly towards Caesar's unprotected back was a massive relief army intent on wiping the Roman legions off the map. This layout shows Caesar's architectural solution to this impossible problem. Rather than retreat, he built two massive fortified walls. He constructed one facing inward to contain the enemy on the hill, and a second facing outward to defend his rear against the arriving reinforcements. By enclosing himself, Caesar removed any option for retreat. He had committed his legions to a struggle where their own fortifications were the only thing separating a Roman victory from the total slaughter of his army. To understand how Caesar ended up in this vice, we have to look at the wider conflict. Gaul was in full-scale rebellion. A charismatic leader named Vercingetorix had achieved the unthinkable, uniting the fractured Gallic tribes into a single coordinated resistance. He knew that fighting Roman legions in open, pitched battle was suicide. Avoiding direct combat, Vercingetorix implemented a strategy of attrition. His forces burned their own farms and destroyed their own towns. By scorching the earth, he made it impossible for Caesar's 50,000 men to forage or survive in the territory. Eventually, the Gallic army withdrew to a heavily fortified settlement called Alesia. Positioned high on a steep plateau, the location gave Vercingetorix an immense tactical advantage. It offered high ground, natural defenses, and most importantly, time. But Alesia's greatest strength contained a fatal flaw. The height and isolation that offered safety from above became an inescapable prison the moment Caesar's legions arrived at the base of the hill. Caesar refused to retreat. Instead of drawing his swords, he ordered his men to pick up their shovels. He shifted to a cold, calculated engineering solution designed to wear down the rebellion. This was the first phase of that solution, a line of circumvallation. Roman troops dug deep trenches, hammered sharp wooden stakes into the mud, and built a continuous rampart over 10 miles long, completely encircling the base of Alesia. Inside the settlement, tens of thousands of Gallic warriors and civilians were suddenly cut off. Food supplies dwindled quickly. As weeks passed, Caesar simply sat behind his defenses, letting time and geography do the killing. The defenders staged multiple desperate raids to break the Roman lines, but they were fighting a logistical reality. The physical and psychological toll of starvation began to hollow out the fortress. Caesar had built a machine. He utilized timber, dirt, and sheer patience to convert waiting into a weapon. But Caesar's real problem was the army he couldn't see yet. Beyond the hills, dust began rising on the horizon. A massive Gallic relief force, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, finally arrived to rescue Vercingetorix, threatening to crush Caesar's rear. Anticipating this threat, Caesar ordered a second, outward-facing wall, a line of contravallation. This 14-mile perimeter was built solely to protect the backs of his own men from the arriving reinforcements. The Romans were now sandwiched in a narrow corridor between two massive enemy armies. They had to defend the inner wall against a breakout and the outer wall against a rescue attempt. If either of those wooden lines broke, the entire Roman presence in Gaul would be annihilated. The trap was now holding the man who built it. The assault came from both sides at once. Vercingetorix's forces threw themselves at the inner ramparts, while the relief army crashed against Caesar's outer defenses in a coordinated strike. Gallic commanders identified a geographic vulnerability. In the northwest sector, uneven terrain made it impossible for the Romans to complete their trenches properly. The relief force concentrated an overwhelming thrust at this single weak point. Under the concentrated pressure of tens of thousands of warriors, the outer wall began to buckle. Roman defenders were taking fire from multiple directions, and the lines started to collapse. Realizing the entire siege hinged on this single sector, Caesar pulled his final reserves. He threw on his red commander's cloak and personally rode into the breach to rally his breaking troops. Caesar reinforced the internal breach while simultaneously launching his remaining cavalry around the fortifications to strike the relief army from the rear. Trapped between the Roman wall and the Roman cavalry, the Gallic relief force shattered and fled. The walls had held long enough for Caesar to turn the tide with a final, desperate maneuver. By morning, a heavy quiet settled over the battlefield. The massive relief army had scattered. Inside Alesia, the last remaining hope of the rebellion died. Having run out of food and allies, Vercingetorix rode down from the heights and formally surrendered his arms to Caesar. Today, the quiet green fields and stone foundations of Alesia hide the violence of that double siege, but these ruins mark the dividing line between two eras of history. With Vercingetorix captured, organized Gallic resistance collapsed. Caesar had secured the conquest of Gaul, pulling vast new territories under Roman control for the next 4 centuries. This victory granted Caesar the wealth and the fanatical loyalty of his legions that he needed to challenge his rivals in the Senate. At Alesia, Caesar used dirt and timber to break the back of Gallic resistance, securing the political momentum he needed to dismantle the Roman Republic and expand the Roman world deep into the European continent.